This is part two of my video terminology. I'm making this just to get a breakdown of why some of us have cognitive dissonance or Stockholm syndrome because of the way we think the language that defines shapes the mentality, not to mention that media and television shapes it. If you haven't watched the first one, I advise you go ahead. We're all on different levels of knowledge. Not everybody's on the same level. The first video is more the introductory. I left off dealing with the effects of lunar and how it affects us, and but pick up where I left off. Okay, we were talking about minuscule letter, and that is a cent sign. The C crescent is influenced by the moon. Men, mon, men. It all sounds the same. Sometimes you have to unlearn what you've learned, and a lot of times I'm misspelling words because of it now. It's tertiary unit. Again, that mon, that's what this is. Now, um, dealing with scent, the word scent. Cent. But this really represents 1 of 100. That's why you have the penny or per cent. But the penny is brass and that represents Mercury. Not getting into that. I'm sorry, Venus, but I'll get into Venus later on this video. And let me see here. Sin. So you have men, mon, men, the same thing. All this is the same. And we also have lunar, or whatever, lunar. Okay, but sin. Sin, so if you see sin like this, sense. And this is about feeling because the moon controls all of that because, again, you're mostly water. Words like sensation, good feeling, emotionals and things like that, sensitivity. Many of these sins has to derive with the moon and these crescents and anything else. Even the word scent, like fragrance, um, is influenced by the word scythe, which this look like the little thing, the Green Ripper has a little hook like that, and that's dealing with Saturn. And get into that later again too. Really, I just want you guys to see how these word spells work and how they define things in your mental state. Speaking of mental, it's another one. Mental, you know, somebody can act mental, and again, that would make them what? Loony. You know what I mean? There you get the concept, and I'm going to move on from here. Now it's time to touch on the sun, which is soul or son, like the son, or son like your child, or soul. We black people have soul for a reason, because you're dark, because you're affiliated with the sun. And a lot of you send your sons to the military where they become a soldier. The word soldier means soldier. So is a Latin or French for the sun. The earliest recorded religions believed that human sacrifice was needed to ensure the sun rose the next day. Soul dire literally means to die for the sun. Soul is also related to the solar plexus. Now, this has a lot to do with the sun and Mars interaction. When you flip Mars upside down, it's war. It's all affiliated. It's all subliminal. You know, your sons go to war. So you can see it visually. Now, soul, soldier, die. Soldier. You can say solidarity. We can do a lot with soul. I'm not going to too much go on it, but dealing with these O's, symbol is the sun, you know, and it's all the same. Sun, soul, the sun in the sky, it's all the sun. Son of God be the son of serious. And I did a video of this speaking of the piscis eternal, which is good. When you drop one O with the sun, it's God. But this is eternal. Wood comes from Woden, German word from Odin. But you never realize it until you research it. You can research this. So when you see these circles, they're crucial. They're very symbolic. And this sir here, like I said before, it's the big dog. That's the metaphor of a Nubis. It's serious. And you see this here? I'm going to touch on that. Dealing with soldiers, military. When you see the sun says sir, you're saying, yes, sir. Because it's a chain of command. This is a higher up. It's a respect. So the sun says, sir, to serious. It's the bigger circle. It's the smaller circle. But it's nothing more than infinites, the Ouroboros, all this stuff, eternal. And you can see these British fighters have symbols of the sun on them, which we might know as bullseye. And when you're dealing with bulls and cows and Taurus, you're dealing with what you may know as God or Baal, horns, the number 11. It's like when I seen that show Stranger Things, and the girl name was L11. I already knew she was going to know magic. I did a video about 11 being a magic number, but when you start knowing this stuff, everything comes to the light. And I'm about to touch on the L, but let me say this. These words, ancient words, they go backwards and forwards. They symbolically mean the same thing. Touching on L is magic, because it's for like tripping. It's equals. It's 11 or two lowercase l's. It's all the same thing. Elevation. You want to go to heaven or whatever. You want to elevate your mind. It's some type of growth. Or you can say anything associated with the word the. It's always the beginning. Now, what do we do in English when we say the? The equals L. You see a lot of thes or THEs on Latin churches and stuff like that, but it equals L. Same thing, elevate to that. Or, if we say it with a vowel, we say the. And why is that? Because we respect it in English, because we have a vowel, ha. And this is how you say God in Greek. But Greek words always have a O, A-S, us, is. You know what I mean? It's how you have Jesus, Exodus, Vectus, and Genesis, and all that other stuff. Because once they got the knowledge from the ancient Egyptians, they wrote the Bible. But it's all metaphoric. Gene-isis. Because it's genes. That's all it is. And this Theos is Zeus. And if you go backwards, you go to Israel, you see the Suez Canal. And this is how these words play, and they all have this sort of relationship. It's not a coincidence. This is what it actually is. And this is how we define things on our self-conscious to interpret things. And this is what directs us of how we learn. And this is what affects our manifestation, because this is what we believe to know what it is. Lack knowledge, but it's okay because we speak English. As long as we speak English, we fall under these word spells that play tricks on our mind and condition us. A lot of us are so passionate that, people may date outside their race. And I might rub some of you wrong, but I'm just going to be 1,000 about it. As long as you speak English, you will never be pro-black. Some of you guys, trip on mixed kids and stuff like that who are actually black. And you say their parents can't be pro-black, but long as you speak English or any European language, it's the same thing because it's all about the mind and mentality. Now, I'm not justifying people to give them a pass, say, okay, do this you know, and be against our black women because I love our goddesses and I support them. But till you own minerals and resources won't matter because most of y'all driving Toyotas and BMWs and stuff like that, so that none of that will be pro anything. You know what I mean? Now, going back to if you lack, you're in the negative. You get where I'm going with this. And when you're in the negative, you're in the minus. And with this word lack, I can put an S. Slack is always behind. And this plays on the word Negro because all this affiliates with it. And this is why there's a lot of self-hate and double standards against us because of this linguistic language of these European languages that we speak, because that's all we know, most of us. Religion is spun. It's always going to be that because it's in the language of that. And what people don't know, that religion is metaphors. And if I just kind of speak on Revelation 6:5-6, a black horse with Libra scales, oil wine harvest, the sun crosses the equinox, and the days get darker, and below the equator is negative because it falls. So falls, will fail. But this fall is dealing with the season. And you want to get your olives, your grapes, that's your oil, or your blood. That's that eternal. But that's just trying to get in the concept of how a lot of this associate with, negativity. You know what I'm saying? Negro, black, and you look in the dictionary, slack, fall behind, this, and this. It plays on the subconscious, and a lot of us don't realize it. And this is why, it's a lot of stuff that works against us, because what you know is the language, how it works in your head. It all has this type of relationship. So just know, once you unlearn what you have learned and get outside the curriculum knowledge, because that curricular knowledge will box you in for the agenda or the ulterior motive for you to be a mental slave. So you have to break those mental shackles and become innovative. You'll always be 2 steps ahead. Now, touching on Revelations, I mentioned grapes and olives. That's dealing with Libra season, which is in the fall. Being familiar with grapes and olives, they grow around that time of year. But in religious entities, your olives, like Jesus washed the feet with olive oil. He might anoint you with olive oil, or you might drink grape juice to represent blood. And why is that? Because these fruits or berries, they come from a vine, which is divine. D in Latin is of vine. Divine means from God, and that's what makes them special. So when you ever hear the phrase like extend of olive branch and stuff, it means peace and goodly and godly like. But the root word even from divine comes from Dayu, which stems to Hindu, and that's where your religion comes from, because you're dealing with Abraham. Abraham comes from the story of Brahma, which predates Abraham, and you can do the research. It goes far beyond deep.